Luca Signorelli was born in Cortona, which is in southern Tuscany, and he worked in Florence, in Rome, and in Orvieto. According to Vasari, he was trained by Piero della Francesca, and he went to Florence, where he was influenced by Antonio del Palaiuolo. Now, what we're looking at here is a painting by Signorelli called The Court of Pan, and it was in the Berlin Museum during the bombing, during the Allied bombing of World War II, and it was destroyed, as were so many works of art. All we have are black and white photographs. There were no color photographs made. Now, your book tells us that Signorelli worked for Lorenzo the Magnificent, Lorenzo de' Medici, and it seems to me it's suggesting that this was a commission by Lorenzo, which seems reasonable. It was in Lorenzo's household that the Neoplatonic Academy took place. I always want to say the court of Lorenzo, but that's not accurate. I always want to say the court of Lorenzo, but that's not accurate because he was not a duke. He was not officially a prince, but he was the de facto ruler of Florence. So his household was rather like a court in that he had poets, philosophers, artists grouped together. And they're very interested in classicism and in Neoplatonic philosophy. This particular work of art has been suggested that it might have some erudite Neoplatonic meaning. At the simplest level, it is the god Pan. Who you see here is the satyr god, the god of the woodlands, and he's right in the center, seated, and you can see he's a satyr because his legs, the lower part of them are goat legs, and then he's human above, like a satyr. And he's presiding over what seems to be musical instruction. You have a number of these figures, possible classical deities, possible shepherds and nymphs who have these long reeds, and they are learning to make music, like fluting, only a very primitive flute. It has also been suggested that there may be astrological import to some of the figures and to the subject matter. Now, one of the problems I'm having with the date is that if Lorenzo the Magnificent was the patron, the date cannot be right. It cannot be 1496 because Lorenzo died in 1492. Either it was not commissioned by Lorenzo the Magnificent or the date is too late. Now, one reason I think that they're giving that date is because it has been suggested that the standing nude youth with his back turned to us is based on a sculpture by Michelangelo, which is from 1496. And that is the Michelangelo Bacchus, which we'll be seeing later. This is a question with Signorelli. Some books will tell you that the young Michelangelo was influenced by Signorelli's interest in the nude figure. Other books will tell you that Signorelli, who was an older artist, was influenced by the young Michelangelo. But we also have to consider their birth dates. Signorelli was born in 1444, and Michelangelo was born in 1475. So there's 29 years difference. It would seem to me that Signorelli would have developed his style. He was a mature artist. It's certainly possible that older artists see things that younger artists do and incorporate those. But I'm quite certain that the nude figure doesn't just come from the young Michelangelo. So I'll leave that question up in the air. But I will say that if this was commissioned by Lorenzo the Magnificent. It has to be early 1490s. The figures can be seen as sculptural, as though they're almost marble or something very hard. And that's caused in part by the very strong modeling of light and dark. They're also linear. You can see very clear edges. And now we want to look at something by Signorelli where I can show you some color. These are his frescoes of the Last Judgment, or the End of the World. They're frescoes that you find in the San Brizio Chapel in Orvieto Cathedral. The commission originally was held by Fra Angelico, and he just started painting the ceiling when he was called to Rome. So that was in the 1440s. I think he's called to Rome around 1450. So the chapel has been languishing unfinished until Signorelli is called in to first paint the ceiling and then to paint the walls, which he accomplished between 1499 and 1504. Now, on the walls, you have a number of these scenes of the end of the world. Okay. And I'm going to show you some of them. Two of them are in your book. We'll concentrate on those more, but I just thought you might want to see a few more of them. This is one of the events that takes place before the Last Judgment. This is from the Apocalypse, and it shows the Antichrist preaching. So these are the people who are being misled. They are believing in the Antichrist rather than the true Christ. And then we see the scenes that we associate with the Last Judgment itself, the resurrection of the dead. And here, as you can see, figures are pulling themselves out of the ground. We have some figures that are still skeletons. We have other figures that have now taken on their flesh. At the end of time, at the end of the world, all of mankind is supposed to be resurrected, take on human flesh again, and their souls be reunited with their bodies, and they are supposed to be judged. The creed says the living and the dead, the quick and the dead. So you see two angels with the trumpets blowing the last trump, as it were, and the figures who have come out and are waiting to be judged. And here you see a close-up view of the figures. And you'll notice, once again, we have these very strongly modeled, muscular figures that seem to be very, very hard. And this is probably one of the most amazing groups of nude figures at the time, to show this kind of interest with so many figures. Here we have the blessed, the elect, the people who are going to heaven. And they are greeted by angels who are making music. But here we see the less fortunate souls, the fall of the damned, the people who have been resurrected only to be damned forever and to be tormented forever in hell. You see three archangels. There are four archangels. We have Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. Gabriel is not here. But the other three archangels are shown in armor as though they are defending the entrance to heaven, that anyone who's going to try to sneak into heaven will not be successful. On the ground and flying in the air, we have the demons who are tormenting the demons who are tormenting the damned, and they're already making them suffer. Some of them have grabbed figures and are carrying them through the air, looking like they might drop them, for example. Let's look at some closer details. Here we have this figure with the kind of like bat wings and horns, carrying off a woman who is looking over her shoulder, toward the angels. That's the way she wants to go, but she's being carried to hell. And then you have this mass of tormented figures who are, torturing the individuals. You'll notice that the devils have these very strange colors, very unnatural colors. You have greens and blues. Here's kind of rust tones. Some of them have lavender on them, which is certainly one way you're going to be able to tell them from the damned human beings. They also seem to have fur around their waist, horns on their heads, and they're essentially humanoid figures with some unnatural or monstrous elements. And once again, a lot of interest in anatomy, a lot of interest in muscular forms, and in the action and the movement of the figures. You're seeing human figures and humanoid figures from just every different point of view, bent over from the back. Some of the devils, you see this devil with his back toward us. The musculature is exaggerating. It's almost as though he's almost an anatomical model where we're seeing the muscles with just simply skin stretched over them. And then, of course, those very strange green buttocks protruding out at us. When we see Michelangelo's Last Judgment later, we'll see some of these same elements. The emphasis on the nude figure. And the nude in all sorts of combinations of different ways of turning and twisting, as though there's an infinite variety of nude poses. You'll also see the devils as humanoid figures. In the case of Michelangelo, they look even more human, except for occasional claws or tails or horns. But it's certainly possible that if Michelangelo saw these, that it would have made an impression on him. At any rate, I will leave that question up to you. And I guess we're going to leave the damned to their fate and continue on with other artists.